It's impossible to predict week after week exactly what is going to come upon us during that week until we see each other again. Of course, it's always been that way. It's always been the case, but sometimes at some points in history, it's felt like we were more certain of what we might be able to expect a week to look like. But not now. Just when we think we have heard the most disruptive and disturbing news event, or we've seen the most encouraging trend, some more information surfaces and we're in a different place altogether. And this week was no different. The scripture that EJ read from Matthew 14, 13 through 21 picks up in the middle of a story. When the writer Matthew says, when Jesus heard about John, he's talking about an event that rocked the followers of Jesus right to the core. The event was actually a brutal execution of one of Jesus's dearest friends. It was a cousin, actually. His name was John. So John had made a bold statement that had infuriated people within the ruling family. So an execution was ordered because of that. Brutally ordered executions by reigning regimes has always existed. The fact that John had dared to criticize someone in power was enough to seal his fate. And Jesus, being so closely connected to John, must have felt that very deeply. Jesus, too, was seen as an agitator. And life was not easy for this agitator. And it wasn't easy for that band of ever-growing dissenters that followed him in first century CE. Reverend Marianne Borg writes, John, the one whom Jesus is mourning, John proclaimed and described what a kingdom would look like envisioned by God. And this kingdom, John dared to say, is a kingdom in sharp contrast to the kingdom of Herod, who's the one who ordered the execution. The kingdom that is empire bore no resemblance to the kingdom of God, end quote. And so when Jesus hears of this murder, he grieves. And that's the setting for what happens next. It's really no wonder that Jesus withdraws by boat. He heads out alone, and he heads out to be alone. He needed this space to collect himself. The news he had heard had broad implications. It was devastating for him, and it was very dangerous for himself and his followers. They were all threatened. Our current situation is different in many ways, but there are some stark parallels. We too feel as if we're living in an increasingly challenging environment. Decisions and statements made today are as shocking and unthinkable as having someone executed for challenging the ruling family's behavior, as was the case with John. We feel this keenly. Added to that, the onward march of this ever-changing pandemic is requiring things of us that are foreign to us. We're uncertain about what's going to come next. We can hardly keep up with the sharp rhetoric from various corners of our information overloaded environment. Some days, we too feel like we want to get out. We want to get away, regroup somehow, somewhere, but where and how? When we feel this way, we're in good company. When we feel the urge to run away, I think this is what Jesus was feeling too. There are things in our lives that shatter us, that stretch us to the point where we're about to be cracked wide open. Things that come at us without warning, or they come with plenty of warning. Some things have been with us so long that the exhaustion has come and gone, and come and gone over and over and over again. Add just one thing to that, the death of a beloved friend or a revered statesman or a global pandemic, and it takes everything out of us. When I read about Jesus' intention to get away into a deserted place to be alone, I know that this is something that's needed. When we are grieving or exhausted or overwhelmed, it isn't a luxury to pull back. We are in a place at a time when we need to retreat regularly. Whether that's taking 15 minutes a day to sit alone in a room, listen to music, breathe deeply and intentionally, closing our eyes and allowing God's presence to enfold us, or whether that's leaving town for a few days, if that's possible for you, to literally see farther, to envision new things, to think new thoughts. If that's not possible, finding a haven within nature near to you can be very healing. For those of you with a backyard, please make use of it. Retreat is not giving up. It is not losing. It's actually shaking off the dust, retying our shoes, getting ready to get back into the marathon. But it didn't turn out that way for Jesus. Even though he left on a boat, alone, wanting to be alone, the crowd still found him. Somehow, when he landed on that beach, there they were. We're not privy to his thoughts at that point. Did he wrestle with himself, wanting to tell the throngs of people just to leave him alone for one day? Or was compassion his automatic default? Because Jesus was so much like you and me, my gut is that he saw them on the shore when he was still in the boat, and his heart just sank. Just that first gut reaction. Remember, he had just received word of this horrific event. His grief was raw, and the danger was undeniable. Of course, we can't say that for sure, because by the time he reached shore, compassion had taken over, and he chooses to meet the needs of these people who had come to meet him. In another text in our scriptures, it said about Jesus that he had compassion on people because he saw them like harassed sheep without a shepherd, like those wrongfully incarcerated without an advocate, like the COVID infected with no more available ICU beds, like those trying to cast a ballot having had their polling locations closed. It's no wonder that when Jesus' followers see him again, they're somewhat incredulous. Jesus is surrounded by thousands of people, and evening is coming. Night is about to fall. They were a lot like us. It would be a little bit panic-inducing thinking about these throngs of people, thousands of them were told. How are they going to get home? They were on foot and it was growing dark. I can't imagine it was not hazardous to travel on foot after dark in those times. It certainly isn't now. Can you hear their tone as they say, "This is a deserted place and it's already late. Dismiss the crowd so that they can go to the villages and get some food themselves." So this is what they said to Jesus. And of course, the exchange that follows isn't surprising. Jesus would like to help them, to have them help them. The followers say, "We don't have any resources." Jesus almost predictably gives them an option whereby they can help. Is he tired? Yes, of course he is. Are they tired? Are his followers tired? Absolutely they are. There's no doubt in my mind that being available to people the way Jesus was was extremely draining, extracting huge amounts of energy from him. At one point, he even mentioned feeling power being drained from him at someone's healing. I remember EJ's sermon last week when he talked about how exhausting this time is. He said, "We are tired, but there are those who are so much more tired than we are. They have experienced much more oppression and for much longer than we have. They are tired too." They are tired too. Jesus knew that. And so he went on to meet the needs of those present, even though he was weary and grieving and had landed in a precarious position himself. We could argue, of course he did. He was Jesus after all. Who are we by comparison? But that begs a rhetorical question. Do we have something to offer? What are the resources that we can offer? What do the throngs of people of our day need from us right now? There could be many answers, and every one of them may feel completely overwhelming. But let's just find one place to begin. What is in short supply right now? Just let's pinpoint a few things. We're living in a time when compassion has been replaced with strident arrogance and cynicism in many public spaces. We see this online with people bullying each other. People can be destroyed online. Compassion is in short supply. We see this locally as people become defiant, demanding their rights, whether that's the right not to wear a mask or the right to be together in person for worship in a building. I was troubled a week ago yesterday when I saw pictures and read the Fresno Bee article of people right here in downtown Fresno meeting in front of City Hall in a large group without masks, without physical distancing, to worship. To worship in defiance of safety regulations put in place for us collectively to get a handle on this deadly virus. Defiant disregard for others seems to be in direct conflict with Jesus' mandate and mission. Jesus, who put others' needs ahead of his own. As followers of Jesus, we're called to be considerate towards our neighbors before we look out for ourselves. It's counterintuitive, I know. It becomes hard, and there are times we really want to lash out. I get that. One thing we can offer our harassed fellow citizens and each other is compassion. I watched a moving interview with Christian Amanpour conducted with internationally renowned cellist Yo-Yo Ma and Dr. Maya Satoro, educator, advocate, author, and co-founder of the Peace Studio. This consummate musician, Yo-Yo Ma, likens the place we're in during this pandemic to a blizzard. Or maybe a more understandable metaphor for many of us, maybe a prolonged, heavy sandstorm. We're terrified, we're lonely, we're worried, he says. This is why he has begun sharing what he calls comfort music, short pieces offered on various online platforms to bring comfort and healing right into our brokenness. I've listened to many of these pieces over the past months. Comfort is in short supply. Ma goes on to state, music is like a caress. It touches your skin. It's visceral. It's palpable. Music literally moves the air that touches our skin, and that's a degree of comfort we can give, end quote. Because we cannot have that one-on-one contact that we miss so very much, this is the way in which we can touch each other. Music has been used throughout the generations to bring people together during wartime, during the Great Depression, in turbulent unrest, and now during a pandemic and a time of quest for racial equity. Musicians, many musicians, are using their art very creatively to offer comfort, among other things. Satoru speaks of building peace with whatever we have at our disposal. Peace is also in short supply. We often don't see it in our communities, on our streets. It seems absent from our halls of government. It vanishes in the pressures of our ICUs. And many times peace eludes us personally. Dr. Satoru speaks of the need for storytellers to initiate conversations that connect people, allowing us to heal across our differences. Imagine what can happen when we listen to one another's stories. If we invite people who are different from ourselves to share their stories with us, are we that safe space? We need alternative solutions to the challenges that face us, Dr. Satoru continues, not only related to COVID-19, but to loneliness, to houselessness, to climate change, income and gender inequity. Peace building has to take up more space in our national discourse than it currently does. We belong to each other, end quote. This message lines up so well with who we are as a church. We are a just peace church. We are a people who focus attention on alleviating systemic injustices of all types, using nonviolence, grounded in the hope of reconciliation in Jesus. Are we doing this? Living this? I think we could look into how to create new spaces to hear stories, to invite understanding, to build peace. In spite of the grave news that Jesus had received, he chose to move toward people rather than away from them. Give them something to eat yourselves, Jesus instructs his baffled and weary followers. Why? Because they are tired too. Because the masses are tired too. Essentially, Jesus is saying they're looking to us for help. Can we answer that call? Can we answer the call to separate the urgent from the important? To summon the moral courage of the Honorable John Lewis to persevere through the unthinkable obstacles that come our way? We can if we do it together. I heard stories this week of how people have prayed with others over the phone, how meals have been provided to those who needed them, how written cards have been sent to encourage those who are sick. These are your stories. These are our stories, and there are many more. We need to share these stories because they will multiply. Referring again to last week, EJ talked about this togetherness, this support, when he urged us to lean on him, to lean on Robin, to lean on myself, and on each other. We know you are tired. We are here. We are tired too, but we are all here together for each other and for others. Quoting Mr. Rogers, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. We don't have to move a mountain ourselves, Dr. Maya Toro says. The little things build on each other and point a way forward. The 5 loaves, the few fish. And cellist Yo-Yo Ma ended that profound interview by playing the mid-19th century shaker piece entitled Simple Gifts. What are the simple gifts you can offer to those who are tired this week? And I leave you with that question. Amen.